and welcome to my channel. This is Order the Traveling Hats. I'm Landon, and we're going to put a winch mount on the GX. If you remember and are subscribed to the channel, I broke this thing on the trail about 3 weeks ago. I tore part of the bumper fascia off. Go watch that video if you haven't, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. So in order to fix that, I decided we would just, instead of getting a new plastic piece and some clips and putting the plastic trim back on and ripping it off again and going through that rigmarole circus, I would just fix it and mount a winch to the Lexus and then be able to trim the bumper such that we would fix or at least improve our approach angles. So we're gonna get started with that today. And I'm gonna kind of take you through where we got the winch mount from. There's actually a video that's gonna come up about unboxing it and my thoughts on how it was packed and the company in general. But just so you know, I got the winch mount from a company called SDHQ out of Arizona. They're kind of a small business. They make some really high quality parts now that I've actually had them in my hand. I know that. And they were a great company to work with. They actually, just as a story, they didn't send a part with the kit that was clearly included on the website. I just simply emailed them back. They got back to me within an hour and shipped it the same day and got it here UPS within a couple of days. So it didn't really screw up the install. It didn't slow me down at all. They were just excellent to work with. No like, oh, we sent it, or oh, we need you to fill out this form. They just shipped it and we're done. So very good company to work with so far. I have nothing to complain about with them, and the quality of the parts they've sent me are just next level. They're really good. I've installed a lot of different parts from a lot of different manufacturers over the years. Only been doing the YouTube thing for a little while, but like before that, I put on stuff from all sorts of different manufacturers, and these guys really made a serious, high quality piece that is gonna serve me very well. I have absolutely no doubt. So with all of that out of the way, we're gonna get started taking the fascia off of the Lexus, because that's the first thing that's gotta happen. So I've kind of looked into how to do that. There's a bunch of clips and some bolts, and then it kind of apparently just snaps off. So we're gonna get started with that and come along for the ride. So I just wanted to show you real quick what we've got here. I've taken off the grill. You can see that now clearly. All the grill's gone. And there's nothing left but the substructure. The crash structure's gone as well. There's a crash bar made out of aluminum that bolts here. This is where the winch mount is going to bolt to ultimately. And then it's also going to bolt along the frame, along the side, down here in some places, I think. Like down here, there's a threaded hole here that I think we'll use. So we're going to kind of see how that goes once we start putting it together. But
Everything came off pretty easily. The grill literally just snaps off once you get a few fasteners off of it. There's about 10 bolts that hold it on, total probably maybe 15. I'm not gonna go through those. You can easily find a video online on YouTube somewhere. They're out there that show you how to take the grill off. I just watched one of those and did it. So I figured that was probably a better use of your time than me going through showing you all the bolts, when you can just go watch a different video. So we're gonna start getting this thing prepped. I'm gonna clean it a little bit to get all the mating surfaces kind of cleaned up before we start putting the winch mount on. And I'll get started with that. And then once we got that done and I kind of have the winch mount sort of in place, I'll show you that. Well, on to the next step. I've gotten the winch mount on. I took the crash substructure off. That crash support, it's a big piece of aluminum, way more than I thought it did. That's good because the weight I take off, I'm adding back with this piece. This piece is heavier, but not by as much as I thought it would be. This thing is beefy. It's made out of really thick material. You can see that. That's nice and thick. It's gusseted. It's welded extremely well. All the welds are very high quality. Now, it bolts on in kind of a weird way. So it uses, I think you can see them there, all 6 of the outer bolts from the factory. So it just uses the factory mounting points. Now down here, it uses a stainless steel bolt that's a little bit longer because it is running through this piece here, which is a lateral support for the recovery point here. Now this recovery point, it's 1/2 inch steel. It's super, super thick. It's bolted on there through that lateral point. It's then bolted on the other side into the frame. It's bolted into this point here with a big 3/4 inch head bolt. It's a 19 millimeter, that's a 19 millimeter. These are 14 millimeters and bolt through the frame, and they support the skid plate kind of support bracket on the other side. Now this skid plate isn't crazy strong, it's aluminum. It's really more of a cover bash plate kind of thing, but that's one of the supports. There's many supports for it. And you got the same thing on the other side, just like that. I just kind of got it tightened up with the impact just now. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it up and set the torques and everything for it, and then we'll move on to getting the winch in. All right, guys, so now we've progressed where I've got the winch in. Had to do a few little things to get it to go in. This mount is really made specifically to fit a worn VR or Xeon winch. There's a control box relocation kit for the Xeon that mounts, I think, over here to this part, and you have to trim this back. Now, I didn't have to do that, thankfully. I got an open road winch. They're a cheap winch. They aren't very expensive. And you might think that that's not a great idea, but I gotta say, a shout out to Matt at Ozark Overland, rather. He's really basically Overland's full time. Lives out of his Jeep most of the year, and he's been running an open road winch for several years now. I actually got it after I watched a video review that he did, and there was a coupon code, so I got a really great deal on it. It's a 13,000 pound winch, which is way more than I probably needed, but you know, you only get the maximum pull and most of the ropes off, so this gives me a little bit more oomph. Really fits well in there. It's in and mounted well. Now the open road fair lead is not staying. SDHQ sent me one. It's just the hardware that I've got is for the open road one, and it's too short. I've got to get longer hardware. I'm gonna have to go to the hardware store and do that. Everything else is pretty much on. You can kind of see I drilled into this cross member, just 2 small 1/4 inch holes to put these bolts. And then I've got the mounting bracket under the control box. Now, if you note, kind of got it safetied with a zip tie here for the moment, because this thing's only really held on by 1 screw at the moment on that bracket. I need a new bracket. Again, I'm gonna have to fabricate one, and I just don't have a way to do that today. So this is temporary. I am gonna come back and the bracket actually just needs to be a little bit longer with 1 more hole in it in the back, and I can fit 2 screws on it, and this thing will be rock solid. So this is gonna be a future modification that I just gotta correct. It's not a big deal, it's gonna work for now. I think it's stable enough that that control box doesn't weigh that much. I don't really need to get to it very often. You hook up over here on the side with a standard 3-pin connector. It's not a big deal. I'm gonna have to cut a hole in the kind of cover that goes up here on both sides, because over here is the free spool lever, so I need to be able to reach down and get to it. I've also routed my power cables through here. Now I didn't put conduit over all of them. This is just floating in space, not rubbing. I really just try to put the conduit where it might rub against some metal to kind of protect it. You can see that there. There's a metal contact point there that's not crazy sharp, but it's sharp enough that I don't want to cut into the insulation. So my solution to that usually is just to put a little bit of flex conduit on it, and it'll kind of help protect it. That's the same thing I did here, as it comes over this metal cross member and then it's zip tied into place so it can't move. Moving up, you can kind of look down where it comes through. There's a little bit more flex conduit right there. As it's not over what you might think would be metal touching it, because it's just it's barely contacting that, kind of laying on it. What I was really concerned about was where it goes through the chassis here, because that's pretty sharp. This is a rolled edge down here. You can kind of see that it's rolled over, so it's not sharp. But this going through right here is a little sharp. Not bad. It's not going to hurt it if it didn't have it, but I like to put it on there as a safety. And then it's hooked up just to the positive and negative. This is kind of weird coming out the side. Usually I'd like to come out the back and go behind the battery, but the way Toyota has elected to put their battery cover on for the positive terminal, it's actually got a slot on the side to come in for an auxiliary. So that's the way I routed it. It's okay. I don't love it, but it's fine. It'll work. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Now, there was a question as to whether or not this would work with my ARB skid plates. I kind of test fit everything. I think it's going to work. The SDHQ mount and the plate that goes on the bottom to cover all of this, they say on their website is specifically made to work with the RCI skid plates, which mount a little bit differently than the ARB skid plate. But I think I can make it work. We're gonna get to that in a minute once I get this together and go get the rest of the hardware. One other thing that happened, I think it's Open Road's fault. The hardware they sent me for the winch is just long enough to go through this thick steel winch mount, and it's not long enough to grab the threads on the nut with the skid plate support bracket underneath it. So I'm gonna have to get just a little bit longer hardware. I'm gonna take one of these bolts out and take it with me to the hardware store in a minute and get a longer piece of hardware for that, and that'll fix that problem. And then I'm also gonna get the longer hardware for this and fix this problem. So I'm gonna have to get kind of the front clip back on this thing to be able to go to the hardware store, because my wife is out of town today and this is the only vehicle I've got. Unless I wanna walk, I'm gonna have to go and get that done. So I'm gonna get this back together, go get the rest of the hardware, and come back and we will finish the job up.
So guys, I'm finally done with this project. It's taken a couple days after the initial install just to get the parts. I had a really hard time getting the right bolts for the front skid plate. I ended up looking up the instructions for the RCI plate that this mount is supposed to work with, and they use M8 by 1.25 by 30 millimeter bolts. So make sure that you get those, because the factory hardware that the ARB skid plates reuse isn't long enough to reach through the skid plate and the SDHQ aluminum plate that goes on the bottom of the winch mount. So to get all that to work right, I had to get the longer bolts. I didn't have a good reference for it because the reference I don't remember reading in the instructions. I've since thrown them away. But they do reference the RCI skid plate, so I looked up those instructions and found the right bolt. It took a little while, and then I've worked this week, so I had to go to the work and then got to the parts store, etc. Anyway, a couple days later, I did get the last two bolts that I needed, and everything's buttoned up underneath now. This winch mount is one of the best made pieces that I've ever installed on any vehicle. I've been building Jeeps since the 90s. So I started out with a Grand Cherokee. I've had a couple of Wranglers and a Gladiator that was on the channel before this. And this is the first kind of Toyota product I've ever owned. And man, if the rest of the Toyota products that are out there are built to this level, then like the Jeep products need to kind of catch up a little. I've installed some kind of sketch stuff on Jeeps. I'm sure there's sketch stuff out there for everything, but
I've also installed some really good stuff on Jeeps, but I've installed stuff from ARB, Metal Cloak, I don't know, different manufacturers, but those two in particular I've installed quite a bit of. I really like their stuff, and their stuff for the most part has fit really well. The last ARB bumper I got, there's actually a video on the channel. I can post a link to it up here. The finishing on it wasn't as good as the previous ARB products that I have installed and owned and been around, but this thing was incredibly well made. The powder coating on it is perfect. Everything fit together. All the aluminum plates underneath fit together. The trick that I found was, though, that the bumper cover, it's going to fit kind of tight when you put it back on to get it to slip underneath the aluminum plate that comes with it and get everything to bolt together. That took some kind of finagling, and in the process I ended up cutting out too much of the front grille, and I've got to do a little touch-up work on that with some touch-up paint. I've kind of sanded it down, but I need to come back with some touch-up paint and try to touch it up. And I ended up with a little bit bigger hole than the template said, but I just was having a hard time getting it all to go together, and I thought I needed to make this bigger. I didn't. If I had just realized that the trick is you need to hook the bumper cover under that plate kind of and almost have somebody help you and push it into place, and then raise the cover up and snap it into place after that, and then it all fits together. But it's just kind of the geometry, I guess, of getting it all to go on where it's supposed to go, and I was doing it alone, so it made it even harder. But once I got that figured out, it went together fine. It just was a little bit of a puzzle, and in the process, like I said, I talked myself into indexing this out a little bit more beyond what the template said. If I just followed the template, it would have been perfect. So SDHQ, totally not their fault. Their template was spot on. I just was inexperienced putting this on. So for you guys out there that want to get one of these, just understand that this thing kind of has to kind of almost be pushed down and snapped into place on the bottom as well as the middle and the top. So beyond that, man, it's just fantastic. Really happy with their fair lead. It's very well made. It's got a nice kind of broad radius on it that allows for no kind of kinking or hot spots on your cable. Now, the other thing, I've got my just standard winch hook that came with the winch on it right now, and it's hooked to one of the recovery points, but I'm gonna get a flat link. It's on its way, and I'll just have a flat link sitting here, and it'll be nice and tucked up. You gain quite a bit of ground clearance and approach angle by trimming the bumper on the sides. I think I gained probably 4 or 5 inches on the sides, which is a real weak point. Anybody that's got a GX that's wanted to take it off-roading, you're gonna know that the bumper hangs down a long ways and gets caught on stuff. That's how some of this started. Was I actually caught the bumper on a tree stump in a mud puddle and tore the bottom off. So that's not gonna happen now, because there's a nice heavy aluminum skid plate that goes back to the main skid plate, and it's tucked up much higher now. Even the center section's up probably a good 3 inches, and then the edges are even more because they kind of slope down a little bit more. So overall, very, very nice system. Hidden, my wife likes it because it's not some big giant bull bar. She hated that on the Gladiator because she thought it looked dumb. And to be honest, it was a bit much. But the other cool thing is the adaptive cruise control, the parking sensors, all of that stuff works. You don't have to modify any of it. You don't have to reinstall it in a new bumper, worry about it not being angled right and working, because it's in the factory grill and it just worked. The only thing I had to do was plug the harness back in and it just worked. So really easy install. I think I want to show you guys just a couple things. I'm going to switch the camera over and just show you kind of underneath what that looks like, and then what I did under the hood to kind of be able to access the winch. Now, this winch did come with 2 wireless controllers, but I still needed to be able to access the free spool lever, and I wanted to have access to the control box in case the wireless remotes don't work. So let me switch the camera over real quick, and we'll show you guys that, and then we'll be about done.
So what you can see here that I've done is just cut a square kind of hole. I've tried to round the edges off some, and I'm gonna ultimately, I got some edge trimming that I used on the bumper, but it doesn't really make these radiuses very well. There's a little rib under here I need to kind of shave off to make it really fit. So I was gonna get some better edge molding and ultimately put around this so it's trimmed out. But if you look down in there, you can see the winch, and right here where my hand's pointed, right down there, that's the free spool handle. So it's very easy to reach. and pull up and turn 90 degrees. This winch is free spooled, and then it snaps back down into place and it's locked. So that's really super easy. The other side, the winch control box is mounted up on a cross member. I showed that in the install video, but that right there is the plug for the cable. So even if my wireless remotes stop working, I can easily just kind of plug into that with the winch cable controller and still be able to use the winch. So everything else is routed in there really nice. I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. You know, I did cut up this plastic cover, but I can get a new plastic cover. That's not a huge deal. If I ever wanted to sell the vehicle, I wasn't really too worried about that. The work I did on the front grille was a lot more extensive than this, and this doesn't show, and it just makes getting to the stuff I need to be able to get to actually be able to use the winch possible. So that's about that. The other thing I wanted to show you was, this is where I kind of screwed up the grill. It looks really bad, but it's smooth now. It's not rough. I still got a little bit of sanding work I want to do on it. And then you can buy some just spray paint that's color matched. I'm gonna just spray it. It's gonna be covered up partially by the flat link, and I think as I use the winch off-road, this part may get dinged up anyway, so I'm not really too worried about it. I may even put some edge molding on it as well, if I can get some wide edge molding or something, and just kind of protect this part of the bumper cover a little bit. So, and it would trim it out too. So underneath, you can kind of see that we've got, that's the aluminum plate that came with it. They've, you know, put these kind of diamond cut holes through it for ventilation up to the radiator. And then that's the ARB skid plate with the dent in it from previously when I kind of hit the stump and broke the bumper. It's dented in a little bit. It would otherwise clear the skid plate just perfectly. It kind of just touches it there. It's not that bad. It barely touches. And yeah, it's just bolts together. They don't guarantee that it'll work with anything but the RCI skid plate, but this is proof that if you want to use the ARB skid plate system, it'll work. The recovery points, I've pointed it out before, but they are massive. They're really just ridiculously overbuilt. And then kind of under here, that's the aluminum plate that goes back to the edge of the bumper cover. And the bumper cover kind of bolts into it, and the inner fender bolts into that, and then that bolts into the center skid plate. And it's actually a lot stiffer and stronger than the factory bumper cover was, because it was all just held together with clips and plastic. It was certainly strong enough to go down the road, but this is just quite a bit stiffer. I can kind of show you that. So again, I put edge molding all along the front cut just to kind of trim that out, and it actually turned out really well. Now this piece here is a big kind of machine. It's a washer that they put in, kind of a body washer, but it's really nice. Comes with a countersunk and bolt. I'm also going to paint this to match the color. I'm going to order that, so that won't show as much, but this is really stiff. I mean, you can push that in there because it's under, but where it's mounted, man, it's solid. It doesn't move, and the bumper cover seems to be even, like I said, stiffer and more rigid out here on the edge than it was before. So overall, really like that. So let me get the hood shut and we'll close the video out.
All right, guys, so that's gonna close the video out. I had a good time putting this on. It took me a lot longer just because it turned into a puzzle at the end. The beginning, getting everything off and getting the winch mount on, the winch installed, was pretty straightforward. And now that I've done one, I think the next one would be very straightforward because I kind of learned all the tricks the first time. So be prepared to spend extra time to make your cuts and be really careful. Don't booger up your bumper like I did. Follow the template. That would be my biggest advice. And then remember, you got to kind of snap the bottom of the bumper on, and it would help to have an extra set of hands for that probably. Overall, again, really thrilled with the quality. It's going to serve me well and serve all of my needs. I improved my approach angle with it. Oh, one last thing to tell you. So I weighed the vehicle on a truck scale before and after because I wanted to see how much weight this added net. So SDHQ says that their bumper, their winch mount that I installed weighs 65 pounds. I asked them. Open Road 4x4 says their 13,000 pound winch weighs another 65 pounds. So that should be about 130 pounds. But you're going to take off the crash structure, you're going to take off part of the bumper cover. There's, you know, some plastic trim and some different things. All of that kind of adds up. So I wasn't really sure what the net would be. So the really cool thing about this thing is the net weight that I added was 91 pounds. So that's a big deal. I added a winch and a winch mount and added less than 100 pounds to the vehicle. I've never done that before in my life. It's always been 200 pounds plus because I put a big heavy steel bumper on. This thing is going to do everything I need it to do. It's going to be great for adventure travel. I didn't mess up the aerodynamics. It still gets great gas mileage on the highway. Well, great-ish. I mean, it didn't get great gas mileage before, but I'm getting about 19, 20 on the highway still. So that's about what I got before. I got about 20. I could get 21 if the wind was right. This thing, it didn't add much weight. It hasn't really affected the handling. They've come up with probably what is the best winch mount system that I have ever put on. So thank you very much, SDHQ. Shout out to you guys. Love your products. Probably going to buy more of them. And that's the other thing, like I bought this with my own money after doing research and reached out to them, asked a couple questions, and then they shipped it. That was the other really cool thing is they shipped it like the same week, and there was no lead time. It just showed up. So it was very well packed. Everything was great. So I guess the lessons learned here are this is a light winch mount. You can not add a lot of weight to your vehicle, not really screw up the suspension or the ride or the gas mileage. And SDHQ, awesome company. So I'm Landon. This is Order the Traveling Hats, and we hope to see you guys out there on the trail.